Are the Huskers ready to match their freshman quarterback's intensity? We will discuss next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, good morning, and thanks for making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate College Football HC, which is a brand new mobile game that is completely free, has no ads, and it's 100% playable offline. Begin your coaching legacy today.
All right, hello. It is Wednesday. I am Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Connor Happer of 1620 The Zone in Omaha is with me. We are inching closer to Northern Iowa Saturday night at Memorial Stadium as the Huskers attempt to go 3-0 and finish perfect in the non-conference portion of their season. One of the real storylines, Connor, this week out of Nebraska camp, maybe a little bit unexpected after that exciting win against Colorado last Saturday, has become the performance that Nebraska got out of its offense against the Buffs. More to the point, the comments that Matt Rhule made on Monday about how the rest of the offensive players need to level up to the intensity of true freshman quarterback Dylan Raiola. We were continuing to talk about this on Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a noteworthy storyline. Obviously, from a couple different standpoints. Number one, that the wide receivers or whoever else around Dylan Raiola, wasn't necessarily there yet. And the other part, which is maybe the better sign, if you want to spin it in a positive way, is that Dylan Raiola is the guy who's kind of setting the tone for the offense. He is. I mean, we're going to play the clip here in just a second. I mean, it's amazing how mature he is, like prepared for the question. And obviously like, all right, hey, what do you have to say about this? Like, he could have very easily either A, not known what to do with it, which is probably the most likely outcome, or B, talked about himself or whatever it might've been. No, he spun it in a perfect way. We'll hear it in just a second, but man, I think the more that I think about the comments from Rhule, it's probably more of a good thing. And it does lend itself to the offense improving as the year goes along, which is obviously what they want.
I think it keeps their heads in the right place during a week where there was the threat that they could go in the wrong direction. Like there was so much anticipation for Colorado and the way Nebraska played in the first half. It would have been easy at that point just to say, all right, bring on Illinois. We're ready for the Big Ten. But no, Rhule has turned it in this direction. And I don't know that we would all be talking about anything much like this. We might be talking about the penalties and some of the things that went wrong for the offense in the second half if the coach didn't go this way. But he steered it in this direction. And then Marcus Satterfield, before we play Dylan's answer to this situation, let's hear from Marcus Satterfield, the offensive coordinator, who was asked the question. You'll hear the question here in this clip.
Concerning at all that there's a challenge being presented to the veterans to match a true freshman's level of preparation? Is that kind of more say something about them or just what Dylan has brought?
I think it's more of it's not a hey guys, y'all are lazy, you're not working hard. They're working extremely hard. I think it's a response to people who ask us, are we going to call the game different because Dylan's a freshman? And the response is no, because he's very prepared. He works really hard to a point where everybody, he's going to raise the standard of preparation around him. By no means, our guys work their butts off. By no means am I saying that the rest of the offense is lazy and they don't work hard. Like, that's not it at all. They're working extremely hard. But I think it's really cool that you have a freshman quarterback that can raise that standard of hard work that's already been done.
Okay, let's hear from Dylan. Go right into this. Here we go.
I think it's just a matter of keep leveling up, and as a quarterback, and we understand in our room that that's a standard, and I think that the standard should be acknowledged, but I don't think it should be celebrated, just because that's what you want out of a quarterback room, is to elevate your team, and I can do a better job of getting our guys on the same page as I am. So I'll take some of that responsibility on me, and I know our guys will accept the challenge, and they'll be playing a lot faster this week.
What a banger of a line from the freshman quarterback. The standard should be acknowledged, but not be celebrated. Wow. Where'd that come from?
For all the people, and this is not Nebraska fans, I think this is more the national narrative, but for all the people who think that Dylan Raiola is just out there trying to act like Patrick Mahomes and look like Patrick Mahomes and stretch like Patrick Mahomes, you might want to take a closer look at what's going on with Nebraska's freshman, because he's pretty mature. Patrick Mahomes isn't always giving answers like that. And sometimes he does, but he's also a 3-time Super Bowl champ. Like, the kid here in Lincoln has got some things going for him that are beyond his, the distance that he can throw the football or his ability to go to a second or third read. He anticipated that question. I think that we can gather that from the way that he answered it. But the fact that he anticipated it and that he would take his preparation to a level where he's thinking about what he might be asked in a press conference when he's played 2 games of college football says quite a bit about who he is as a player and what Nebraska can expect over the next 2+ years.
Also, can I say something about him being like Mahomes thing real quick? I mean, people are obviously, this is the first thing they now notice about Nebraska football, that that Nebraska has a quarterback that's like cosplaying Patrick Mahomes. They're at the very least acquaintances, and like, I think it's probably appropriate to say that they're friends. Like, that definitely
they're
takes
cousins.
They might be cousins. That takes all the weirdness out of it, right? Like, it's not weird, right?
Yeah, it's not like he's impersonating like some actor in England.
Yeah, it's like he's a weird stalker. He's taken things from what he does. He obviously watches a lot of his tape, Well,
they have the same training regimen. They work out with the same trainer and the same quarterback coach, 2 different people. So the fact that they would have like a pregame routine that looks the same, that's not surprising.
Okay, there you go.
All right.
That's all I have on that part. But back to the original point, I do think the maturity, it's something that like I had in my head as an idea that Dylan Raiola would bring to the table because of his background and who he is. Like, the idea was he's pretty advanced. I think he's probably exceeded my expectation of how mature he is in like every category, whether it's football, like making the throws, or like doing the things that prepare him to make the throws, or answering questions, or saying things, about his teammates or about himself. Like, he has exceeded every thought that I had about him potentially like being advanced before the season. And I already thought really highly of him. So it's a great start to his career. And I do think, like I said, it's a positive for the offense, because it should catch up to him at some point.
Yeah. So what do you think happens here in week 3? Nebraska's offensive players have been challenged. They've been challenged to match what Dylan Raiola is bringing. They've been challenged to keep the intensity for 60 minutes, to know the game plan, to have a sense of what Nebraska wants to accomplish when it goes into this game against Northern Iowa, and then go out and execute it. You continue to hear the same message from Rhule to Satterfield to Raiola, and then some of the other players on down the line about what Nebraska's expectation is, not just in this game, but in every game, to have a culture of execution, to limit the turnovers, and to play with physicality. Like, it's check, check, check. And Dylan's saying it, and you're hearing older players who are falling in line behind him also saying it. So we talked to Jamal Banks on Tuesday, and I think from him, he's the single digit guy on the offensive side. Like, it's seeping down. So I'm interested to see what this looks like on Saturday night, and if there's a difference in the attention to some of those things that Rhule and Satterfield and Raiola have been talking about here during this week.
I would think so. I would think that it's the kick in the butt they need, and then do it for a half, and then put them all on the bench again, just like they did in the first game of the year. That's at least the theory. All right, that's the offense. Coming back after the break, Tony White and the Huskers plan to do something way back last December, and now it's September. They're doing it. What is it? We'll talk about it next.
All right, Locked On Nebraska fans, I want to take a minute and give you a heads up about a brand new mobile game that I think you're going to love. It's called Ultimate College Football HC. In this amazing game and simulation, you get to step into the shoes of a head coach and lead your college football program. So can you imagine actually being the head coach of the team that you love to watch on Saturday and going into your computer, into your phone, and recruiting players, hiring staff to oversee the training camps, handling the scholarships? You control every detail of the program. It's in your hands. We want to know if you'll be able to handle the pressure. Here's what I love about the game. You're responsible for calling offensive plays, and your strategy will not only determine the success of your football season, but it will shape the future and legacy of that program. Ultimate College Football HC is completely free. It has no ads, and it's 100% playable offline. Play on the go when you want, how you want. And of course, we have a special offer for Locked On Nebraska fans. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCFB, all caps, inside the game store to receive a free boost to your program. Make sure to take advantage of this perk. It will get your team off to a strong start. Just download the game, visit ultimate-cfb.com, or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate College Football HC. Begin your coaching legacy today.
All right, and we want to take a second to talk to you about Gametime. It's coming up on college football season. The pennant races are very much in full swing in Major League Baseball. It's time to get excited about fall sports. And if you've got a game that you want to see in person, maybe it's a Royals playoff game, for example, Gametime will make it that much easier of an experience. Gametime is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. It makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app go down closer you get to first pitch. So whatever you want to do early this fall, you want to go to a concert, Major League Baseball game, a playoff game, and a college football game. If it's a hot ticket, Gametime's going to have it. I love that you could see the flash deals. You could see the views from your seat, and you can customize your spot in the stadium. It's all there for you on the Gametime app. So let's take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, we're back. First of all, last night, Connor Happer, Mitch Sherman with you. Connor Happer from 1620 The Zone, Mitch Sherman from The Athletic. Nebraska and Creighton in volleyball, a banger last night. Nebraska remains undefeated against Creighton all time, but Creighton just seems to be ever so slightly closing that gap. A 5-set thriller last night that looked like Nebraska was going to sweep, and then Creighton almost came back and did it. Mitch, that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it looked for a while like Creighton was going to pull the reverse sweep at Devaney, and that 33-31 fourth set was, or third set, sorry. That was one for the ages. Great entertainment. I watched on Big Ten Network, and when that was going on, kind of wish that I was in the house at Devaney. I'll be back out there soon, but what a great stage for the sport again in the state of Nebraska. Both of those teams are headed for big things this season, and probably going to be in contention. Certainly going to be in contention for the Big Ten and Big East titles. So a ton of Nebraska girls out on the court last night too, on both sides of the net, to see so many who represent Nebraska communities and Nebraska high schools. It's so cool when they do that, and even better when they're both ranked in the top 10.
Maybe, just maybe, they meet again in January. That would be quite the show for this state. So back to the tease from before. What's this Nebraska defense doing? They proclaimed earlier in the year that they wanted to find a way. They had to be able to find a way to get home sack the quarterback, get him on the ground, or at least hurry him without doing too many crazy blitzes. Get home with a 4-man pass rush, and you do it consistently. And it's the hallmark to a really good defense. Well, they're doing it. We mentioned earlier in the week, Nebraska is blitzing through 2 games at a Big Ten low rate, and its sack total of 8 is tied for second in the Big Ten, and they're only facing about 55 plays a game. So the pass rush is going very, very well so far this season. So I guess, Mitch, why do you think it's working out? Is it just the fact that Ty Robinson and Nash Hutmaker are better than the guys in front of them? Is it quality of competition? Like, why is this working out so well for Nebraska so far?
Yeah, I think some of it's got to do with the opponent. I think Nebraska's going to have to generate ways to cook up pressure against teams in the Big Ten. It's not all going to come as easy as it has seemed to come in the first 2 weeks. UTEP, of course, was a program in transition, first game under a brand new coach with new systems, and then Colorado just isn't able to protect Shedeur Sanders really anytime. So maybe they're skewed numbers a bit in the same way that some of the numbers were skewed with the defense last year. But at some point, when you've played 14 games as a defensive regime, the numbers are who you are. And, there's going to be 15 games under their belt in 2 seasons after this week. And the numbers are likely still going to look very good in 3 games this season. So, let's give credit where it's due. I think the thing that's interesting about this for me is that this was a directive from Matt Rhule when the offseason began. Tony White mentioned this on Tuesday, that they sat down when the dust settled from the season and they digested the disappointment of finishing with 5 wins in 2023 and said, how do we get better on the defensive side at getting to the quarterback without blitzing? And they carried that directive, that message, that goal through the entire offseason. It's something about this program, I think, that separates Nebraska from what Nebraska has been in the past, and that there is an organization, there is a certain way of doing things where it's not haphazard. It's not, this is what we want to do here now, and then a month later you're talking about a different thing. No, they were focused on this for months and months, and you're seeing the results here through 2 games.
It's funny. We just spent 10 minutes talking about how, the offense has this kind of clear path to getting better. Like, right. They have their directive. I do feel like what happens with and everybody is satisfied with where the defense is at right now. Like it's pretty well acknowledged around college football circles, and especially around here, that Nebraska is one of the better defenses in the country. But I do think there's still like a step or two you can take it. If Nebraska, and especially considering the change in the types of offenses they're going to be facing as well, like the results change on that. But if Nebraska continues to pressure quarterbacks with only 4 or sack them, it's going to lead to turnovers. They're going to get more turnovers out of that in the defensive secondary. And you already saw an important pick 6, obviously, by Tommy Hill. You've seen a couple interceptions outside of that already this year. So like that's part of the snowball. It all starts there. It all starts up front. If you have that strong defensive line, it just makes it so much easier to cover. Nebraska's defensive secondary has covered, and its linebackers have moved. So it's been really in sync so far this year, and the results are, I think, still yet to come based off of what they've accomplished so far.
I like the way they're getting home on the pass rush. There were times last year where it seemed like Nebraska was often close to getting sacks, but wasn't quite there. And you get pressures, and sometimes that led to incompletions or even turnovers. This year, I think they're a step more dominant up front. And some of that has to do with just the physical ability of Nash Hutmacher and Ty Robinson and Jamari Butler. Prince Will, when he's been in the game, has been a fantastic pass rusher. I think he's shown the ability to get home in a way that we didn't see necessarily a year ago. He had a sack that was taken away, a big one against Shedeur Sanders. It was taken away because of a penalty that I don't think impacted his ability to get to the quarterback. So yeah, I'm with you that I think there's more to give from these guys. What do you this Saturday against Northern Iowa is probably not going to bring those same kind of sack numbers because Northern Iowa has thrown just 42 passes in 2 games and run the ball 85 times. So it's more than a 2-to-1 split. But what do you think the defense looks like this week? What are the highlights that you're anticipating?
I know people are doing this thing now. I'm glad you asked that question, Mitch, because people are doing this thing now where it's like, oh, well, they've seen these kind of like, patty cake offenses and they're kind of trying to spread you around and stuff like that. Like, how are they going to hold up against the run? How are they going to hold up against a run? They did it for an entire season last year. Like, Nebraska is better equipped to defend the run than it is to defend teams that are going to spread you around. I'll say it right here. I'll make a prediction before the prediction show. Northern Iowa, 0 points on Saturday.
Ooh,
0.
Man.
Nebraska's pitching a shutout. 0 points.
Yeah, they haven't lit the world on fire in 2 games this year against FCS competition. One of those games was against a non-scholarship team. So
both of them, I think.
Is that right? Is that right?
So. Yeah.
The school in Minnesota that they played,
St. Thomas.
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
I think they recently, I think they made the jump up. St. Thomas did to like the normal level of SCS, but like, hey, we're splitting hairs here. It's not been. They have not played a Big Ten team. Yeah, we've heard talk this week about the Panthers backs, and they have a 240-pound back, and it's like, okay, well, Nash Hutmacher is 310 pounds, and Ty Robinson is 315, and I think Jamari Butler's 265. So, like, okay, yeah, I mean,
so Rhule sort of laid it out on Monday, kind of that way, and he was like, yeah, well, now we get a different challenge. Now we get team, we'll see how we react when teams will kind of want to punch us in the face, and I think he was probably mainly referring to Illinois, but I think it was more of like this, hey, you guys haven't done bleep yet, that type of thing. But the truth is they have. Like they did this for all of last year. I have absolutely no concerns about Nebraska against the run. None. I'm more confident in Nebraska against the run. I think the first 2 games were the bigger challenges, and they passed them with flying colors.
Yeah. Tony White did say on Tuesday that Nebraska has the worst defense in the country because it's Tuesday. So good thing good to see that he's in full game week mode. After the break, we asked you to tell us what you wanted to hear from the Tunnel Walk music. We're going to revisit this because you told us loud and clear. That's coming up next.
All right, it's Apper here for the FanDuel Sportsbook, which is America's #1 sportsbook, and we have something extra for you right now. You got to get on this because you've already missed a week. You need to jump in right now. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. It's your opportunity to just give it a shot. What if you had all of the games? Well, you have an opportunity to do so with the FanDuel Sportsbook. Then with your YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is that Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Once again, that's 3 weeks of free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube TV, and all you have to do is place a $5 bet. Head over to FanDuel.com/LockedOn, FanDuel.com/LockedOn, and download America's #1 sportsbook today.
All right, final segment of the show on this Wednesday. Mitch Sherman and Connor Happer here with you. So I made my feelings known, as I've done before, Tuesday on the show when I said that the Tunnel Walk music, not the Tunnel Walk, the Tunnel Walk music has to go. And the people have spoken. Our poll question put out on the Locked On NEB Twitter account. Go give that a follow if you've not. Should Nebraska stick with the old serious music, or should it find a new walkout song? Well, 63% want to stick with serious. So whatever. I still believe that the people would like change if the change happened, and they just don't know what they want.
That is it. That is no. Let me, Mitch. Like, you're completely right about that.
Really, you agree with me?
I voted, for example, to find a new walkout song. Number one, because I want to see. I felt bad for you because you were getting beat up a little bit.
That's fine.
But mostly, I'm not interested in changing it that much. because I don't know what they would change it to. I'm scared of what they would change it to. And so I think most people are like that, and they're like, well, you know what? It's fine the way it is right now. Let's just keep it. There's nothing obvious out there. But Mitch is giving all these great suggestions, and people are just refusing to listen. It's sad.
Some people loved my idea of the purge. Somebody told me, I thought this was ironic. Somebody said, that's terrible. It's going to get old and repetitive in 3 weeks. And I thought,
if it did serious,
but the Chicago Bulls walkout song from the 90s is not old and whatever. I'm done. Nobody clings to tradition quite like Nebraska fans, and that can be both good and bad. But I've been outvoted, so I'm going to shut up about it.
All right. It's sad that you're letting this go. I thought this was one of your crusades. Maybe there will be an opportunity to come back up. Yeah. Okay, good. Later on. But yes, the poll question does have it, and they are binding. 63% say stick with the old serious right now. We should also mention, Mitch, before we get out of here, that Nebraska this week, out of their big weekend of recruiting, which they had many high-profile recruits on campus, did get a local commit, Christian Jones, who was probably the top prospect in the state for the class of 2025. I think it was maybe looking like this wasn't going to go Nebraska's way for the majority of the summer. And then I think Nebraska's start to the season has maybe changed some minds, or at least opened some eyes among those top guys. I mean, that's a big get for Nebraska. And then there's a couple more that are still hanging out there that I think they have an opportunity to get as well.
They're getting close to being done. And I know sometimes we say that when they're at like 19 commits, where Nebraska's at right now. And you say, yeah. They're going to sign 26, 27 guys. Well, things are changing in college football. And if you're going to have a 105-man roster limit, a hard cap, then you can't sign 30 guys every year. If you do, you're going to have 150 on your, 120 to 150 on your roster. And that's before you take any walk-ons. So they are not that far. Now, I think Nebraska will find a way to make room if, let's say, a Dawson Merritt wants to jump back over. Not back. He was never in the Nebraska camp, but he was seriously considering Nebraska and then came back on a visit last week for the Colorado game. He's committed to Alabama, the linebacker out of Kansas City. If Cortez Mills, the wide receiver who's committed to Oklahoma out of Miami, wants to come on board at Nebraska. He was also on a visit this last week. They'll find room for him and some others, but it's not going to be a huge number that Nebraska signs in December. So Christian Jones, massive priority for Nebraska. When these players pop up locally, and he's been on the scene as a big target for Nebraska since his freshman year at Omaha Burke. He moved over to West Side when Paul Lamanji, the coach, went from Burke to West Side, and been of the most importance for Nebraska in this 2025 class since he was a freshman.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I feel like we've been talking about his recruitment for exactly that long, 4 years at this point. And it's when there's a player like that, a high profile recruit in the state, you just feel like this kind of obligation that it means a lot to get him, not only obviously between the relationship between the player and the coaching staff, or the player and the program, but also it's a perception thing. Like, you want to say, hey, yeah, we got this guy and we're on the rise, and he sees it and he's right in our backyard. So if he sees it, then everybody else should be able to see it too. Also mention, Michael Terry, who was on campus this past weekend as well, the 5-star from the San Antonio area. He's been back multiple times now. Feels like it's a Nebraska-Texas battle with him. So they put themselves in position with high-profile recruits. And Nebraska is ranked number 23 right now at this moment. If they start the way that most people think they're going to start, they're going to they might have a single-digit number by their name by the time they go to Columbus. It'll be close to that. So the recruits will continue to take interest in what Nebraska is doing.
Yeah, Christian Jones is like the 25 version of Carter Nelson a year ago. Carter Nelson at this time last year, or a little bit later, was toying with Notre Dame, was still looking at Georgia, And for Nebraska to land him was huge in that 24 class. And Christian Jones is that guy in state this year. Of course, Nebraska already has others in state like Pierce Newberry and Tyson Terry, Caden Vermas. I'll just list them all. Jackson Carpenter, Connor Booth. I think I got them all. I'm not looking at anything here in front of my screen, but those are the guys from in the state of Nebraska. A good class of players in state, and some others who are going out of state, including Chase Lofton, the tight end who's committed to Florida State. From Millard South. Will be interesting to watch his recruitment as it moves forward and see if he does anything, if he takes any visits anywhere, as the Seminoles are not playing the kind of football that I think a lot of their commitments probably would have expected.
You're having squirt gun fights though at practice. Which, did you see that video going around yesterday?
No, I didn't see that. No.
It's pretty fun.
Seems like what you should do, right? Got a big game against Memphis this week, 0-2.
It was this clip of DJ Uiagalelei taking his snap. And, I think it was a real drill because they were like, it was a punt return or something like that. And the guy was squirting him with a squirt gun.
It's supposed to rain at the FSU game this week. It was really funny considering where the program's at. One final thing. Sticking on the subject of recruiting, I had the chance to talk to Jackson Cantwell, who is as high as the number 2 player in the country, according to some of the recruiting services, a consensus top 5 player in the country, number 1 offensive tackle in the country, out of Nixa, Missouri. He was in town for the Colorado game, has been to Lincoln before, and saw a different Nebraska than what he had seen on previous visits. Spent some time with Dylan Raiola, the fellow 2026 offensive player. Dayton, of course, is the younger brother of Dylan Raiola from Buford, Georgia, and they hit it off. And Jackson said, if Dylan's anything like Dayton, then he's a guy that I want to spend time around. He was treated like royalty on this trip. Got to meet Will Compton and Taylor Lewan and take pictures, and that's all part of a story that I've got up on The Athletic on Wednesday about Nebraska waking up as a program here in early in 2024. So Jackson Cantwell, somebody to watch for sure, as the recruiting cycles continue. He's next year's senior class. Mm-hmm. His parents, his father is Christian Cantwell, who was a silver medalist in the shot put in the 2008 Olympics, and his mom is Terry Steer Cantwell from Crete, Nebraska, who threw the shot and was a All-American at SMU many years ago, and of course has that Nebraska heritage. She was also an Olympian. So looks like it's going to be Missouri and Nebraska for Jackson Cantwell, at least as the leaders. And dad's from Missouri, mom's from Nebraska. They live in Missouri right now. Nebraska's got all this new stuff going. Missouri's a playoff contender. That's going to be a very interesting one to watch as the months go on.
Yeah, I know people don't like to skip ahead in recruiting. They're like, let's just focus on the guys that we have right now. This one is probably worth your attention for the 2026 class. All right, Mitch, that is it for us today. We'll be back with our we're going to tell you how poorly we did on our predictions and things of that nature last week, and make predictions.
Hey, send us mailbag questions. We're going to do that one of these final 2 days of the week.
LockedOnNB@gmail.com. Thanks for listening to Locked On Nebraska. For your first listen today, now go check out the Locked On College Football podcast for your second listen. Plenty of stuff there with Spencer McLaughlin. He gets it recapped and previewed for the week behind and the week ahead in college football. That's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.